If it is Wednesday, and if it is 5:05, and if it is KTAR, you're listening to The War Room. All right, let's get it started. Joining us in studio on our panel, we've got Gail Bass, television, radio, film, et cetera, Gail. Great to see you.
Great to have Gail Bass on the program.
All right, stealing my lines from 10 years ago is
Yes,
just
sir.
fine. Okay. We have
47.
All right, enough of that. Stacey Pearson is joining us, co-founder of Lumen Strategies, Democratic strategist. Stacey, great to see you back here.
Good to see you.
And look at this. We got Stephen Richer, the former Maricopa County recorder. Stephen, how are you, my friend?
I'm fantastic. Being out of politics, it's a beautiful thing.
Have you been able to unwind after the election a bit? Because you certainly were not treated very well, my friend.
Yeah. I pulled my back, though, because I didn't want my successor to have the mini fridge that I paid for with my own money.
Absolutely.
And then I pulled my back doing it. It's just like God works in mysterious ways.
You know what? He's unwound. He's wearing a camo baseball cap and a hoodie. He has decompressed.
Solid.
But the hat has an eagle and an American flag
There
on
you
it.
go.
So, America.
Well, Stephen Richer, you also had an op-ed in the Arizona Republic today talking about Arizona should look at Florida when it comes to elections. We're going to talk about that in 10 minutes. But first, why don't we start with the breaking news? Israel and Hamas have agreed to a ceasefire deal. And so I want you to think about who gets the credit here, because somebody has to take credit. This is Trump, I think, a week ago, and he said this.
If those hostages aren't back, I don't want to hurt your negotiation. If they're not back by the time I get into office, all hell will break out in the Middle East. Can you elaborate? And it will not be good for Hamas, and it will not be good, frankly, for anyone. All hell will break out. I don't have to say anymore, but that's what it is.
Okay, today, President Biden was asked this question on his way out. Not of office necessarily, but of his way out where he was holding a bit of a press conference.
Thank you.
Who gets credit for this, Mr. President?
Who gets credit for this, Mr. President?
Thank you.
Who gets credit for this, Mr. President? You or Trump?
Is that a joke?
All right, who gets credit for it? Let's start with Gail.
They both do.
Oh, come on. You got to pick one.
Well, no, I think they both take credit because their teams were actually working together and talking to each other. Mm-hmm. And the people, like the people in Qatar who were helping do the negotiation, and I believe the Egyptians, I believe they said, it was the Biden team doing the negotiation. But, you have to remember that Trump has access to all the information. They give him that information as a courtesy because when you become president on day one, that's not when they finally give you access to the files. He's had access to those files ahead of time. So I think they both get credit. And when Trump says, I'm going to hurt you, it does make people listen. I was like, I'm not crazy. Yeah. I'm not crazy. They say, well, carry a big stick. And, with the presidency, it's like when he says something bad can happen.
Richer, what do you got, Richer?
Yeah, well, I'll say the boring thing first, which is these deals are complicated, and I'm sure negotiations have been going on for months.
Yes.
But the timing seems awfully coincidental that President Trump takes office on Monday.
Right.
He's made these strong comments. It was October 7th, 2023, that Hamas launched its terrorist attack against the people of Israel, and it just seems weird that, hey, year and a half later, just happens to be right before Trump's inaugurated, that this starts to look like it's going to get wrapped up.
This war has lasted for 15 months.
They see the writing on the wall.
Yeah.
The crazy guys got the nuclear codes again.
Yeah, they're like you know what? Now or never.
Do you want your drunk uncle? And I say, look, he was elected in a free and fair election.
Yes.
And we all agree that him having the nuclear codes is intense. It is ramped up a level of intensity. And so I think both, all of the above.
Mm-hmm.
I'm giving Trump all the credit here. I think when you come out and you say something that strong, because when I heard that, it was like a week or two ago, I don't remember the date. When I heard that, I go, my goodness, I'll tell you right now, a deal's going to get done. This is where it's kind of nice to have crazy on your side. This is nice. This is like you see the bully outside in the playground, and now the bully is on your side. And there is something to be said about Donald Trump being, a bit of a menace, being, he likes to threaten people. When he comes out and says it's going to be a mess, you got to take him seriously because you don't know what he's going to do. And so do I give Biden any credit? Listen, I don't know what Biden's been doing the last year. I have no idea if he's even, coherent. I have no idea. But when Trump speaks like this, you're going to listen. And Hamas is like, you guys have devastated us. I don't want that guy doing it to me again.
You know what? You're doing any president a disservice when you say like the next guy came in like Reagan or whatever. When other people have been doing the negotiations for months, he was not doing the negotiations. He was too busy ducking gunfire.
Very similar to the Iran-Contra deal when Jimmy Carter was really struggling and he was saying hand over the Americans. And then the Iranians didn't know what they were going to get with potentially this wild card movie actor, Ronald Reagan. Yeah. And I think there's a little bit of wild card phenomenon with Donald Trump. And it's just like, do you really want to turn over that wild card and find out that it could mean the total annihilation
and
of
it's
your
also
movement?
a party platform issue, right? The amount we came out of the Diamondbacks World Series game to Gaza protests.
Yes.
Like that was a very difficult look for Phoenix. And the Democrats have appropriately recognized that there's famine and destruction in Gaza. The Republicans are like, burn it down. Like, you end this war. You started it. Let's go. And so the Democrats, I think, were in a position of weakness because they were so
their party was split. You had people who were pro-Palestinian, you had people who were pro-Israeli, and Biden suffered because he stood by Israel. And the fact of the matter is, somebody needed to, because let's face it, what happened on October 7th, 2023 was a devastating attack against the Jewish people, and it never should have happened.
Of course.
And people coming back saying, well, what about? They started it. You and everybody knows when you make terrorists your leaders, this kind of stuff happens. This wouldn't have happened if they had reasonable leadership.
Right, and what are all the headlines saying today? That Israel, a nation, is making a peace treaty not with the Palestinians, not with the Palestinian Authority, but with Hamas, a terrorist group. And so for all the Palestinian apologists, you have to account for the fact that it is the terrorist sect of your population that is calling the shots here and is determining whether or not they're going to release hostages.
And they're negotiating with people who want their destruction, which is the hardest thing for me to comprehend at this point.
the end of their existence.
Yeah, because
the end of their existence.
Yes, and here's the thing: when people are held captive in Israel, they get jobs, they get treatment, they have food, they have everything. And when they're being traded back, they don't want to go. They're like, I like how the Israelis are treating me.
So we're inside the war room. We've got Stephen Richer, Stacey Pearson, Gail Bass. First segment of the show, we wanted to hit two things on Trump. One, Israel and Hamas. Was it Trump who got it done? Was it Biden? Okay. Here's the second thing. Los Angeles. Looks like when Trump comes to office, there's going to be some strings attached to aid. Will Trump withhold some of the disaster relief from L.A. to make sure that, hey, we can't have this happen again? He says there's been bad leadership in California. This probably would have happened one way or the other, but it certainly could have ended better. What do you think? Is Trump going to have these, is he going to say, yeah, we're going to have some strings attached to this and we're going to send aid, but we're going to withhold it until we see that you guys are willing to do some different things out there when it comes to wildfires? I'll start with Stacey.
Well, so as a Democrat, I was concerned after the first few days of the fire that we were birthing a million, let's say, in LA, a million new independents / Republicans, right? Who people are just like, the government's not working. Traffic's terrible. My house burned down. My kids' school sucked to begin with. Like, I'm not doing this. Trump playing politics with this is probably the only antidote for that kind of general paradigm shifting, angry politics platform style movement. And so for the Republican Party, he certainly shouldn't play with politics on this issue. Help the people, sort out the leadership later. I don't think that he's got the self-control to do that.
Gone first before he gives any aid. Stephen, what do you think?
I find it distasteful that any politician should make this about politics in the face of such devastation, but politicians are going to do politics, and so perhaps I shouldn't have been surprised. I think President Trump has been served up on a silver platter an opportunity for him to come in and take a terrible situation, make it better, and to gain popularity. And if there's one thing that President Trump likes, it's more than fiscal conservatism, more than any sort of philosophical principle.
Sure.
It's people liking
I
him.
want to be liked.
And so I think this is the opportunity, like he could be the savior, basically, like, coming in and being the guy that fixed COVID rather than the guy that had COVID happen under his watch.
So, Stephen, you wrote a little op-ed in the Arizona Republic today. You know all about elections. I've said it before. I think you did a hell of a job. I think you should have gotten reelected. I definitely think that Carrie Lake dragged you down. I don't like what she did, but she's paying for that now. So here's the deal. What do you think about Arizona's elections and Florida? We should be more like Florida? That's part of my take from what I saw in the op-ed.
At least in election administrations.
Let's get his mic on. There you go.
At least in election administration.
No
Okay,
hanging
what is-
chads. No hanging chads, right?
No. But hanging chads launched a good conversation, and I think conversations need to be had after each election. And the reality is that for the foreseeable future, Arizona statewide elections are going to be determined by small margins. That means that we need to have a high percentage of our results in before the networks can call the races. And we are unable to do that because in Arizona, you're able to drop off your early ballot up to and including Election Day. That still has to be signature verified, has to be scanned in, yada, 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 before it goes to tabulation. That means we might not get those results until 2, 3, 4 days after election. I wrote that those are brutal times to be an election administrator because everyone in the world potentially is accusing you of doing something unlawful. They're shouting at you for being incompetent, and all you're doing is the process that is necessary to make sure that those votes are valid. I think that is an untenable situation to put those election administrators in, and I think it's a bad look for Arizona, and I think that people are willing to trade off a little bit of access, a little bit of convenience in order to have our election results available within the first 24 hours.
Stacey, do you agree access versus convenience?
So it's access, convenience, and the ability to get through democracy, right? If we're talking about disenfranchising folks in the Navajo Nation who come in with their early ballot on Election Day and need to show ID that doesn't exist on the nation, it's not going to be tenable. But I agree that those days that go dark where you can no longer process the ballots that have been received in the mail, it's ridiculous. Like it's absolutely insane that you were prohibited from being able to process signatures during that Friday to Monday or Saturday to Monday ballots that had come in. I think there are some pretty easy legislative fixes.
Will they want to do it?
Yeah, that don't disenfranchise folks.
Will they want to do it?
That's the question.
So if I have the numbers right, nearly 300,000 people turned in late earlies. That's what we're calling it. Late early ballots on Election Day. They filled in their ballot that was mailed to them, and they were too lazy to go and put it in the damn mail. So they show up at the poll and they hand it in. And so, from what I understand, the late earlies aren't tabulated for like 48 to 96 hours after Election Day. Why not just tear it up right there and go and vote and in the little booth, and then you don't have to count this stuff. It doesn't seem that hard to me.
Well, I certainly agree. We would still have a robust early voting period. If you didn't want to have to deal with the lines, if you didn't want to have to vote in person, then you should just mail it back in, 5-7 days before, or go drop it off 5-7 days before. And I am very sympathetic to anyone who makes a concern of accessibility. I just think that people are dropping them off on Election Day because people will drop them off at the last minute that they are given, no matter when that is. And so I think we should just move that up. Arizona voters, there will be a learning curve, but they'll respond, and I think it will be good. And then we won't have to be going through this agonizing period where what's Arizona doing with this presidential election?
Right.
Don't they have like 27 days now, and this would just be shortened to 24 days to turn it in? That's like when your teacher gives you a week to turn in an essay, nobody turns it in on the first day. It's all coming in on the last day. Well,
Whether it was 2 weeks or 1 week or 3 weeks. Yeah.
It's like you're taking away 3 days. I'm sorry, but I'm siding with Steven on this one.
I don't care about your math homework. Like, we're talking about democracy, and things can change on a dime.
But if you can't get it in,
but there are
why
people
should you even? Why
but there are
should you
people who hold their ballots because they don't know who they're voting for.
But there are also people who are lazy. And then maybe they get they're not allowed to vote.
They're still
then.
Americans, and they're still
then get your ballot
they're still
in.
allowed to vote.
But then get your ballot in.
I hold my ballot longer. I hold my ballot like I hold my Goodwill donations.
After you,
I drive them around for a few days.
You too?
I do too.
My car is always
I take it
full.
on a nice tour.
But
like,
you hold
even what I do for a living.
When you're saying you hold your ballot after you fill it out, or you wait until the very last second?
No, after
okay.
There are a couple that I'll hold on to.
Why?
Like I'm not sure. Like just races I don't know where I'm at on.
Right.
And despite being a Democratic consultant, I have occasionally voted for Republicans, including the gentleman sitting next to me.
Hey, yo.
Same.
And so,
#same.
Yeah. So there are times that I hold out just to make sure that something crazy doesn't happen.
I think we give people so much opportunity in such a long period of time to figure it out. My thing is, if you can't figure it out in time, then I guess you didn't vote. And I'm fine with that. If you can't get your ballot in, that's a you problem.
I would like more people to actually vote. Like, how many people nationwide actually voted for Trump? I think it was 23%.
Great. Love to boost turnout, love to boost voter registration. All I'm saying is that not only is that period devastating for people who work elections, but it also crushes confidence.
It does.
It crushes confidence of not just election deniers, but the guy who cuts my hair at Great Clips who says, geez, it's weird that we don't have our final results. We don't know who won Arizona, but we know who won Massachusetts or something
Yeah,
like this.
yeah. Florida has
It's all
a bigger population, I believe.
All right, we got to leave it there. We got to leave it there. All right, Gail Bass, good at everything. Film, radio, TV, you name it.
I'm not good on my motorcycle when I stall at a red light,
Okay,
but I'm working on that.
How's your pickleball game?
I've never played.
Oh, that's very
me
not
neither.
Arizona.
Me neither.
And I have
You're
one,
not real
and I have a
Arizonans
pickleball,
then.
and I have a pickleball set, and I want to play because I love badminton. I'm a
all right.
terror
You're
when it
not
comes
a
to
real
badminton.
Arizonan until you go to a 55-plus community and
Wait,
hit the pickleball.
I went to a bingo game on Friday night, so
Oh,
I feel
geez.
That's solid.
$21
Yeah.
best Italian American
Is it at
club.
Casino
It was
Arizona?
No,
Oh, no.
Italian American
Okay.
club. Highly recommend.
All right. So,
What were we talking about?
we've got Joe Biden's farewell coming up at 6 o'clock. We're going to carry it live. Can't come soon enough, if you ask me. We'll go over that in a few minutes. Let's talk about Governor Hobbs. Third year. And she was in studio with Chris and Joe earlier today. Questions asked about immigration and the border and education, vouchers. Okay. I want to know more about what she's doing. I don't think she's done a good job telling everybody what she's doing. Like, if I were to look at the last 2 years, and someone were to ask me, what do you think the big thing she's done? I guess the only thing I would say is she's had her red pen, and she's gotten a bunch of the crazy stuff vetoed. And that's good. And I think a lot of people who didn't necessarily like her, that's why they voted for her and her opponent anyway. So over the last 2 years, has she been a strong leader? I don't know if I've seen enough. What do you guys think?
I think we've redefined strong as obnoxious and crazy.
Really? I don't know.
I think in large part, and that's not her style.
And don't get me wrong, Stacey. Like, I don't want to see her on the news like we would have seen Carrie Lake every day, or like when Joe Arpaio was here, he wanted to be in front of the camera every day. I don't want to see that. But I do want to hear from her once in a while, and I don't feel like we've gotten that the last couple of years.
So where I think the pivot, where we can see that pivot, is in her State of the State speech from Monday, when she reminded folks that she has National Guard troops on the Arizona-Mexico border. I mean, those are things that I'm obviously closer than most to the administration, and I forgot. Like, it was nice to hear that come from her
But
again.
it's also part of your job as a leader, and if you want to get reelected in a couple of years, you got to tell people that stuff.
Well,
because
re-election started now, right? I mean,
Exactly.
it really did start.
But Stacey,
November.
I forgot about that.
I did too.
I forgot about that.
I think she's going to remind us of the things that she's done, and we're going to have folks that are testifying on the good work that's happened, be it medical debt erasure or National Guard troops.
Just we all know that there are two personality types in the office, even in the corporate setting. The person who quietly goes about getting some work done, and then the person who maybe even doesn't do the work, someone on their team does the work, but is banging on about it all the time. And we might think it is unjust that the person who's talking about it gets a lot of the reward or maybe gets the promotion. But the reality of politics is you not only have to get some wins, but you have to sell that you got some wins. And so I thought her speech was wise in that I thought it was about as straight down the middle of the fairway as you could get. Didn't touch anything that was like from the far left of the Democratic playbook. But I do think that there will be some people who will be asking her over the next year, what was the defining legacy of a Hobbs administration, and what is that type of victory going to look like in a second term if you should seek that?
So who are her allies? It's not going to be Trump. It's not going to be the Arizona legislature.
I think corporate Arizona.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like she was like
Absolutely.
She's all over TSMC, and and that's important. Our governor's supposed to be on that. We don't, like you said, you don't want the governor to be, having to respond to all kinds of stuff and with a witty soundbite. I want my governor to do the work.
I think
Education community,
foreign direct investment, and I think that she will go to them and say, I preserve. I mean, maybe this isn't how she'll pitch it, but I preserve the status quo, and I kept us. I kept me out of late night television talk shows, and I think for a lot of the business community, they just don't want to rock the boat that much, and they don't want to have egg on their face. And so I think that will maybe be the pitch, whether that or not that's sort of glamorous enough for the median voter, I don't know.
But do Democrats feel like she can win in 2 years? Because we've heard the rumors of her being primaried.
It's never going to happen. Yeah.
Never going to happen.
It's never going to happen.
I heard.
Where does the money come from?
I heard the rumor that a certain Secretary of State person, Lieutenant Governor person, might be sniffing around. Is that not true or false?
Adrian has gone back on that, though he was playing with it for a little bit. I think he has to. Everyone has to accept the reality that she already has over, I think, $5 million in her war chest.
$6 million in her war chest.
It is hard to unseat an incumbent Democrat or incumbent governor. Period.
Yeah.
It's especially hard in a primary, and so I think that is fanciful.
Okay.
Even if it's not happen.
Even if it's Karen Taylor Robeson, who got an endorsement for Trump before she even said whether or not she's running, don't you think because we're still a solidly red state? I think still,
we are absolutely by numbers.
I would
we
think that
absolutely
she
are.
would really put up a fight.
And I think any Dem who's running statewide office in 2026 has to look long and hard at the fact that Donald Trump won this state by about 100,000 votes, and that is scary. That being said, I think that Katie Hobbs would have a better chance against Karen Taylor Robeson as an incumbent than she would have had if they had just faced off the first time.
Okay.
Is that the matchup? Is that the matchup we're looking at in 2 years?
Who
Well,
knows?
Not in 2
I mean,
years, but,
to say that Donald Trump's endorsement is net benefit today is,
change.
I mean, that could change 10 times between now
How
and...
is his endorsement in 2022? Not good.
I think
Right.
it was
it was less good than less good if that's the it was goodness.
The red wave didn't happen.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. It was good in the Republican primaries, but it was not very helpful in the general election. No. And we don't know yet what that will look like in 2026.
I didn't like his presidency. I thought he'd do a lot better. I'm disappointed in his presidency. Inflation, Afghanistan. He told us he was mentally okay. He wasn't. He stayed in the race too long. I know I'm saying all the bad things, but I don't think this guy was a good president. And I'm no Trump fan either. But I'm glad he's leaving. I want to see this thing, and then I want to just, flush it. I don't want to deal with Joe Biden anymore. And I know what we're looking forward to is Donald Trump, and many people aren't looking forward to that. And half of America certainly is looking forward to that. But Biden wasn't any good. That's my take. What do you think he's going to say tonight? Because I don't know. He's not going to say anything to convince me that he did a good job. And I know Stacey's staring me down.
I'm like, where were you the last 4 years?
Yeah.
Who, Joe Biden?
You.
Oh, I've been saying this for a long time. Listen, I even said at the beginning of Joe Biden's, maybe beginning of 2024, I wasn't going to vote for the guy. I wasn't going to vote for him. No, he opened the border. He did a terrible job. I don't think you guys can convince me otherwise. Go ahead and try.
I'm not sure there's a need to convince anybody at this point, right?
Yeah, it's historians who will look back because, like, if you think about the $1 trillion that they invested in our infrastructure,
Right.
and we really needed it, and Trump wanted to get it done, he didn't.
Yep.
Biden was able to reach across the aisle and get bipartisan support for that. That's why you have all these highway projects. Our bridges need to be, they needed to be modernized. We needed that.
TSMC is here from the CHIPS Act.
The CHIPS Act. We needed that. And, Trump said, I think I want to get rid of it. And it was Republicans who said, oh, no.
Whoa.
Oh, no. We actually need that. And so the thing is that there are some consequential things he's done that he didn't put he didn't go out there and say, I did this. We're not going to see the effect until TSMC is up, running.
Yeah.
People are buying houses. Their kids are in school and all that stuff.
Stephen Richards shake his head.
Look, I was rooting for him.
Me
I was
too.
rooting for it to be a successful presidency. I was rooting to move on from President Trump, especially after January 6, 2021.
Yeah.
I think very few people will watch tonight. I think he has largely already been forgotten. I think history will remember him as could have been the senior statesman who restored normalcy after an aberrant Donald Trump presidency, but he held on, and instead he will be known as the guy who didn't bridge to the next generation, the guy who put his vice president in behind the eight ball, and the guy who brought back Donald Trump. And I do not think that Joe Biden will go down in history very favorably.
I think if you look at his legacy is that Donald Trump is back, more popular and more powerful than ever. And Joe Biden's job was to beat Donald Trump and get rid of Donald Trump.
And then
Wait a minute,
And he didn't do it.
And hand it off.
Oh, yeah.
Say it again.
Is Trump more popular than ever?
You didn't win the popular vote before.
I think there's a lot of reluctant Trump voters who saw Biden's performance in the debate and went, "Oh man,
that killed him. That killed him."
What I will say is, I took my dad's keys away after his third accident.
Yeah.
And this is 10 years ago, and the regret is not doing it sooner. And the party should have taken Biden's keys away.
And maybe the greatest moment in American history was George Washington willingly walking away. And to be able to make that similar decision would have cemented Joe Biden in a positive place. I think it will be very negative instead.
Thanks for watching Outspoken with Bruce and Gatos. Tap to watch more from KTAR News and click the button in the middle to subscribe.